Hey everyone, Kevin here with JCR Off-Road. In today's video, we're going to be installing our Crusader front bumper on this 2021 Ford Ranger. You'll start off by removing this lower skid. It's only held in with 4 bolts. You'll need a 15mm socket. It's not too heavy, but it is kind of large, so just make sure you have it supported as you take out the final couple bolts. You can then remove both tow hooks. You'll have to start by taking this outer kind of rubber trim out of the way. It's really just tucked in behind this black plastic fascia portion, so you can pull that out. And then on each side there's a tab that kind of hooks and locks around the tow hook itself, so you can just pull that down and off the front. Then with that out of the way, grab your 15mm socket again and remove the 2 bolts here holding those in place. Then you'll need a 10mm socket to remove the 5 screws along the bottom edge of this black plastic portion here. From here, this should just be held in with clips, so we're going to kind of have to grab behind these edges and carefully pull it out and pop those clips free. Just pay attention because you are going to have some wiring attached behind here for these proximity sensors. With all those clips free and it's still kind of loosely attached with those wires, there's 2 clips behind here, kind of top and bottom, that you're going to have to spread out while gently pushing in on the sensor. You should be able to pop those free. And then from there, it's just a couple clips kind of holding that harness loosely in place. And once we have it off, you can kind of see the tabs here that you'll be pulling out on. With that out of the way, you can now see this lower section here that's going to have to be cut and removed from your bumper. We're basically going to follow the line you see here and bring it just vertical, kind of straight up, and remove this center section. You can use a marker. It doesn't have to be super critical here. I'm going to take a piece of this 3M fine line tape and just kind of roughly mark it out. You can use masking tape as well. It just doesn't like to follow these contours quite as well. But you'll wind up with something that looks about like that for your line to make your cut. Before actually making the cut, you'll want to pay close attention to the wire harness that runs inside of the bumper. You'll start out by pushing all these clips through and kind of freeing that up. There should be, it looks like, 4 across the top and 2 on the bottom. And you can always grab a screwdriver or something to help you out here. With all the clips removed, you will then want to get this harness up and out of the way of your cut. So you kind of have to feed it over and up, kind of squeezing it between the bracket inside of here and the bumper. So with that, we just kind of wedged it up here out of the way temporarily for now. And then we grabbed our cutoff wheel, which we'll be using to cut through the metal portion of the bumper here. As always, wear your safety equipment, specifically glasses and gloves at least, and then just follow your tape line to make this cut. Then with this side cut through, you'll go repeat that process over on the other side. With that cut, you'll have 3 screws along the bottom that need to be removed. These 2 outside ones will need a 13mm socket, and then you'll grab a 10mm for the one toward the center here. You want to make sure when you pull this center screw out that you have this supported so it doesn't fall down. And then we can set this off to the side. With that out of the way, you want to take the time to come back in here and both clean up your cuts and touch up any exposed metal surfaces with some paint. This is going to be hidden behind the bumper, so it doesn't have to be a color match paint unless that's what you prefer. You can just come in here with some black and just make sure this is all sealed up so you're not going to experience any corrosion over time. You'll then need to remove this sensor and its mounting bracket. For that, you just need a 10mm socket. You're not really going to be able to see this on video, but you'll reach in just straight behind and kind of follow this bracket up to find the 2 screws holding it in place. After you get both of those screws fully removed, you should be able to kind of lay this down and pivot it out of here. And then on the back side, you'll have to remove 1 wire harness clip from the slotted hole there on the bracket. And then you should be able to just press in the tab on the wire harness connector here and pull back to get that unplugged. We can then set this sensor off to the side for now. So as you continue on, you'll now need to remove kind of this entire plastic lower air dam. It's just held in with some plastic clips. There's 1 up top on each side here, and then the other 4 we'll have to kind of get down underneath to show you. To get these out, you just need a flat blade screwdriver or something like this panel pry tool. You'll get behind the kind of outside edge of the clip, pop that out, and then you can get behind the back side of the clip and get the entire thing removed from the vehicle. Now the remaining clips are quite hard to kind of see and even get to really. They're in here kind of alongside the radiator. The way you're viewing it right now is kind of from back to front on the truck. So this bottom one you can kind of see. We can get our panel tool in here and pop this clip free. And the process on these is just like the ones up top. The second one is even further up in here, not really able to be seen on camera, but once we pull this down out of the way, you can kind of see the second clip hole up top here that one's located in. With this out of the truck, you can now see the front clip location as well as the back 2. So these are the ones that are a little harder to get to. And honestly, you're not reusing this, so you're not reusing any of the clips. If you're having any difficulty with these, it's not gonna hurt just to pry on those and break the clip, allowing you to kind of drop this out, get any remaining clip pieces out of the way, and just toss this off to the side. Next, working one side at a time so that the bumper remains supported, you can grab a 21mm socket and you're gonna remove the 3 nuts up here. Now obviously that does allow this to move quite a bit, so you will want to pay attention to bumper alignment as everything's going back together. But our main goal at this time is to remove the nut plate, or really bolt plate if you will, from the factory that's installed here. So you can press that back in and then kind of slide it down around the frame and out of the vehicle. Now if your truck has never been apart before, or at least the front bumper's never been removed, this bracket is going to have 3 of these nuts, if you will, installed. These are kind of just a small sheet metal nut that's there to hold this in place, kind of prevent it from falling off of the frame when the bumper is removed and installed. So for those, you can just hit the ends of these 3 studs, kind of driving this back out of the frame. That'll just kind of buckle these and let them pop right off and let this come free. With that out of the way, you can grab one of the 1/2-inch bolts, washers, and flange nuts from your bolt pack. You'll be installing that in this inside hole here.
At this time, you want to tighten that one up just enough that it's kind of supporting this side of the bumper and holding it in place, but you can still somewhat forcefully move things around for bumper alignment purposes there. Then while we still have this somewhat apart, we're going to start routing this wire harness now up into kind of this portion of the front bumper. So over here on this side, just go ahead and tuck it up. You'll be routing kind of down below this clip as it's too tight to the bumper mounting bracket there to get it up behind, but you can potentially even use this clip to just kind of zip tie that in place. And then continuing to push this up over top, you may even be able to reuse some of the factory clips here into some of the holes up above to kind of help support this as well. Now I'm also at this time going to remove this short portion of the wire harness containing these factory front proximity sensors. This is just temporarily as we're going to install this into the new bumper, and then just pay attention as you're doing this kind of as to which one is the driver and passenger side, not only so that they work properly once installed, but also so that you have the slack required to get this plugged back in later on. You can then take this plug from our ACC bracket and sensor and kind of locate this one up, kind of push it up and find a spot where it safely stays in place up somewhat behind the grill so that we can relocate that later on. From there, you can go ahead and repeat this process over on the other side. We'll now take a step away from the truck for just a minute to get our bumper prepped for install. So down here, you're going to be installing a 20-inch light bar if you have one, the proximity sensors in these front two holes, as well as a winch on your mounting platform back here. Now, as far as winch mounting goes, it's pretty straightforward. You have a slotted 4-hole pattern back here on this double layer mounting base. So that's pretty easy. Generally speaking, you're going to be using your winch supplier's provided mounting hardware to get that bolted down, and then you'll just leave it a little bit loose so you have that slotted adjustability when you're getting it installed up on the truck. The only kind of critical thing there is with most winches, since this is a somewhat compact platform, you're going to want to relocate that solenoid or control box off the top of the winch up somewhere underneath the hood. So just pay attention to that when you're purchasing and selecting a winch, as some are going to come with that relocation kit and others you may have to purchase that separately from your winch manufacturer. Now, spinning the bumper around, you can see the two light bar mounting tabs up here. So these are slotted tabs. Generally speaking, your aftermarket light bars are going to have either a stud like this one here or a bolt out of the end. You can kind of temporarily start those bolts in each side and then line it up in here. Now, these light bars are going to vary just a little bit from manufacturer to manufacturer, so pay attention, see if there's any gaps on either end down here, and you may have to shim that to get this to bolt in tight. Additionally, just to make sure that you don't purchase one that is too wide, generally speaking, a safe bet is 22 inches max length from tab to tab on here. Obviously, once you have this fully installed, you may need to come in here and loosen and retighten these to kind of adjust the light vertically, but for now we're just going to go ahead and tighten it in place, in our case using a 7/16 wrench. So there is some slack to spare kind of down on this plug end of the harness as this sort of doubles back on itself through here. So to get started, I'm going to just clip this kind of Christmas tree style clip plug or zip tie off of here as it's not needed any longer. And then coming down toward the plug end, we can see kind of that factory end of the tape. So we're going to work to start unwrapping this down here. You could technically cut this, kind of scoring it and peeling it back that way, but then you're risking damaging the wires inside of here. So just take your time and work on it in this manner, just unwrapping it back down the harness. Once you have pretty much all the tape peeled free back to this plastic loom that you see over here, this should just kind of easily separate. You can then get the length that you need to reach from one end to the other. With the sensors kind of loosely in each of the sensor holes out on the bumper, you can kind of estimate where you want to tape this off and kind of let it Y, if you will, so that you can have enough slack to get this tied up once everything's installed out on the truck. With that tape job finished up, it should look something like what you see here, and we can then get our grommets and these sensors installed in the bumper. At this point, if you haven't done so already, you'll find these two rubber grommets in your bolt pack. These are going to go into each of the sensor cutouts here on the bumper. You can kind of just start by pressing one end in and working your way around to get that into place. making sure that it's fully engaged on the bumper there. From here, you can take that factory sensor and just press it into the backside of the rubber grommet and just work it all the way in until that factory clip kind of stops it to locate it. Once you have this bumper fully installed on the truck and you know everything is functioning properly, it's not a bad idea to just come back and add a thin bead of RTV silicone around here just to kind of secure those and make sure they're not going to come loose over time. Once you've got both sensors installed, it should look something like this, and we can now work towards getting this installed up here on the truck. In our case, since we have the truck up on a lift, we're going to be using a transmission jack to support our bumper. If you're doing this on the ground in your garage or in your driveway, you can get the help of a friend or even use a floor jack to help support the bottom of it during this process. As you're raising the bumper up to the truck, go ahead and plug this harness back in and then just pay attention to it as everything's getting lined up to make sure you're not pinching any wires. Now, as you're getting everything lined up, these gaps are going to start to kind of tighten up here, so just pay close attention there. Make sure you're not kind of bashing or running this bumper into the factory bumper up here and damaging your paint. You can even add some tape in between there as a small protective layer if you're concerned about that, but you should be able to kind of closely monitor that throughout this process and be just fine. As far as hardware goes, we're going to start out by finding the factory mounting bolts. These are the mounting bolts that were in place for your tow hooks that we removed earlier. You'll then want to find this bracket as well. This is what's going to be used to mount your skid plate. This is going to function with the factory skid as well as the JCR engine skid. You can then pass the bolt through this hole in the skid and get it started through the bumper and up here into the frame. And then take the second bolt and pass it through the cutout here in the bumper and kind of achieve the same thing, starting that one into the frame. We'll then use our 15mm socket to draw this bumper up close to the frame, leaving it just loose enough that we can still have our adjustability and our mounting brackets here. For these two outside mounting holes on the frame bracket here, you're going to want to find the provided nut plates with pre-installed nuts on the back side. These you will slide up behind this mount, and then you can reach through the front of the bumper to get these aligned vertically, as well as kind of add some support to them. Once you have that lined up, you'll grab another one of the 1/2-inch bolts from your bolt pack with washers to install into each of these locations. At this point, you want to at least loosely install your front skid plate. Now, a couple things to point out here. The main reason for doing this is to line up the mounting hardware and holes in these outside mounting brackets. At this time, you're also going to want to make sure that your winch hardware is tight, because you're going to kind of lose some access to that there. So adjust that front to rear and tighten it up before the skid plate gets in the way. So with that winch tight, you can grab the 3/8 button head bolts with washers from your bolt pack. These will install from the bottom up through the skid plate and into that mounting bracket. And then you'll have a 3/8 serrated flange nut to go up top here. Again, this is primarily just to line these up before we tighten all the bumper hardware. So I'm just going to leave these a little bit loose so that we still have a little bit of adjustability here on the skid. So once those are in on both sides, we can start to tighten up the bumper mounting hardware. Now, there is no set way that you have to tighten up all this hardware. It's kind of whatever works best for you to get everything lined up properly. What I like to do is start with the two kind of innermost 1/2-inch bolts that you would have installed earlier on these front frame horns. The easiest way to tighten those is just with a 3/4 socket on a ratchet up through these access holes, or if you want to wait to get the sensors in until this point, you can actually reach through here with an extension and then install the socket and a wobble in here and kind of drive it tight through that access hole. Before you tighten these up, just make sure that this main factory bumper section is nice and level and kind of centered on the truck, as that's what hardware is going to kind of locate that at this point. And once you're happy with that, you can tighten these on each side. Next, you'll want to tighten both the 1/2" hardware here as well as your factory metric hardware from the bottom kind of simultaneously to draw the bumper back and up tight to the frame. So for these up here, you'll use a 3/4 socket, and the factory hardware down below, you'll use a 15. Once all your main mounting hardware is tight and you're happy with your bumper alignment, grab a 7/32 hex to tighten these button heads holding the skid to the lower brackets. Once all the hardware is tight, find the plastic caps we provide and snap them in to these lower holes, mainly for appearance purposes here. From here, if you haven't done so already, you can now install your winch fair lead and hook potentially there, and then work on tying up any wiring from the sensor wire harness and maybe even your light down here. And then we'll move up top to get our ACC sensor relocated. To remove this, you need to kind of pull forward and up to kind of rotate that and pop it free from the airbox. When you hear that pop, you should be able to just kind of slide it forward, releasing the clips down here. You can then grab a panel tool or a flat screwdriver and remove the 5 clips along the top here, securing this upper panel in place. These are very similar to the 2-part clips from the bottom on that lower plastic air dam. With that removed and off to the side, you'll grab a 10mm socket and you're going to have 2 screws to remove up top here, so 1 on each side. To access the clips for the lower end of the grill, we're going to remove this inner air dam piece up top. For that, you first want to kind of lift up on the top tab of the grill here and press forward to free up a little space, and then you'll need a 7mm socket. You're going to use this to remove 2 screws on each side, 1 out here and 1 just on the other side of this plastic trim section. You'll then need to switch to an 8mm socket, and you're going to be removing this black screw down in here that kind of frees up this vertical air dam section. Do that on both sides. All you're really looking to do here is free this section up enough that you can move it around and even flex it a little bit if needed, so that we can get this inner panel out. You'll also be removing this inner plastic kind of trim or cover piece. So you use your 8mm socket to remove the bolt over here, and your trim tool or screwdriver to remove this clip. That should free up this whole cover and allow it to be removed. To remove this, you're now going to need to slide it kind of forward and get it rotated down. So manipulate these outside panels as needed to free that up. You will also have to pull forward just a little bit on the grill. And once you have it down vertically like that, you should be able to work it up and out from behind the grill. Now you have 7 of these style clips that need to be released or removed to free up the bottom of the grill. For that, you're going to need a flat screwdriver, and you'll reach in and press down on the top of this clip while pulling out on the grill to free those up. Now, admittedly, I've already done 2 out here toward the side, so you want to start with the 2 out on the sides and then work your way down across the bottom. With all your clips released, you should be able to just pull straight out on the grill. With that removed, you can now get a better look at those clips and where you're pressing down on the center of them. You can now find your ACC relocation bracket, which you're going to be using to mark these 2 holes using the bracket as a guide, and drill into the plastic kind of grill and bumper support braces down in here. You'll be installing the bracket down on this flat surface of both the center and driver's side brackets. So you can slide that down into position and get it lined up. And then I'm just using a silver Sharpie here to make a mark roughly in the center of each of these slots. Now in each of those marked locations, you're going to need to drill a hole out to 5/16 to accept your button head hardware. For that, I'm using a step bit or a unibit. You could just as easily use a standard 5/16 twist drill bit. Now since you're drilling on an angle here, you will have to work a little bit to hold your drill straight, but since you're drilling through a plastic bracket, that shouldn't be overly difficult. Then with one pair of your 5/16 button head hardware, you can install this into those newly drilled holes. Now grab your factory ACC sensor and bracket. You first want to remove the cover off of here. So pop this clip free from each side using your flat screwdriver. And then there should just be a few locking tabs on this cover that allow it to snap free. From here, you can grab the sensor and this portion of the bracket and essentially just pull forward, separating it from the three kind of threaded ball studs in here that it's secured to with these rubber grommets. With the remaining two 5/16 button heads, you can now install the factory bracket into your new relocation bracket, kind of in this fashion with the button heads from the outside in. To tighten this hardware up, you'll need a 3/16 hex for the bolt head side and a 1/2 inch wrench or socket over on the nut. As you tighten this up, you just want to make sure you're roughly in the center of the slots horizontally this way and that your sensor is pretty much vertical here. With all your mounting hardware tight, be sure to pull your wire harness up through and plug it back in on the back side of the sensor. Now with the grill still removed, this is a good time to tidy up any wiring that's remaining, whether it be your light bar, your winch, or what have you. And then at this time, you can actually come back and reinstall the mounting hardware for these outer trim pieces, the center trim over your hood latch here, as well as that upper air dam section before snapping the grill back in place. You can then snap the grill back in place using those bottom and side clips. Then install the two retaining bolts here up top. Followed by the upper cover and its retaining clips. Then lastly, reinstall the air intake tube and the two Torx head fasteners up here, just making sure that when you get this down into place, you press it back until you hear an audible click. So at this point, your installation is complete. If you have any questions at all about this bumper or anything else we offer here at JCR Off-Road, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can always send us an email at info@jcroffroad.com or call us at 269-353-1184.